What would an extra $1,500 a month do for your life? What would an extra $2,000 do for your life a month? What would an extra $3,000, go up from there, a month do for you for your life? I think a lot of people, when they think about real estate investing, we see all these gurus online and people that have these huge portfolios. They have tons of trailers or apartment complexes or mobile homes, and it seems impossible. It seems unobtainable. And honestly, for the normal person, it is. The amount of work and time and money raising that goes into that, or luck or time in the market or family wealth, that's what most people are not going to be able to do that. Or if you were, you don't want that lifestyle of the work and time you would have to put in to raise money or to earn money or to borrow money. I mean, people that are investing at that level, it's so stressful. I mean, I even think about that. I want to have maybe dozens of rentals, but I don't want to have thousands of rentals. I just don't want the stress that comes with owning something like that and running that and dealing with that on my own. But I really want to propose to you the perspective of just the benefit to your life of having maybe one or two paid off rentals by the time that you retire. And that's so doable if you buckle down and you save, or you have an additional part-time job or something like that. So a lot of people that I know, when they get older and they go to start selling properties, or you're just talking about their financial situation, they had normal jobs. They were teachers, or they were, just everyday normal jobs, normal salaries, but they saved and they put the down payment down to buy maybe one or two investment properties. And then by the time that they retire, they're paid off. So you can either sell that property and you just have the income, or not the income, but you have the profits, the proceeds from the sell, or it's paid off and you have that monthly income. And I think of this a lot with a few of the properties we have. We have 3 of these townhouses, and they're entry-level homes. They're one of the more affordable options in town if you want a townhouse to rent, or if you wanted to buy a starter home, they're one of the more entry-level price points. And I have 3 of them, and I rent them out for about $1,500 a month. And of course, in 20 years when I retire, that will be a different number. But I have mortgages on them. But I think if somebody bought one of these properties and they paid it off over the years, and by the time they retired, they had $1,500 a month in extra income. When I talk to older people who are trying to budget or struggling with their retirement income and their Social Security, having one of those, $1,500, having 2 of those, $3,000, that would be a night and day difference for somebody's life. And so I encourage you, instead of looking at, everyone's goals are different. Some people want to buy a bunch of properties and have a lot of cash flow and be able to quit their job. But a lot of people, if we would just look at retirement, rentals is retirement and a way to grow our wealth and contribution. Because here's something I think about. So I'm just going to give an example of one of these townhouses. When I bought them, because I've had them for many years, they were $130. And they were always on the market for around $130, $140, depending on the condition of these properties. So say you bought one of those for $130 and you put 20% down, that's $26,000. In my market, it's pretty common for a seller, unless it's a hot property that's getting a lot of attention, it's pretty common for a buyer to ask a seller to pay their closing costs. So you don't have closing cost fees. You would have put $26,000 down, which I get is hard. That's a sacrifice. That's not getting a new car for several years. That's driving a used car, maybe having an extra part-time job and saving that money, but it's possible. And then over the years, you don't buy any other rentals. You have some maintenance over the years. You have some rough tenants that move out, and you have to put some money into fixing it up and doing repairs and updating it, maybe replace a furnace or an air conditioner or a roof over the years. So there's going to be some additional money going into it. But every month, you're making a couple $100 in cash flow. You set it aside. You save it for your repairs that come up as they come. But every month somebody's paying rent, and they're paying the balance you owe on that property down. And on top of that, they are also building your equity, because as years go on, the value of that property grows higher and higher. I'm going to give you a modern scenario because a lot of people like to go, well, yeah, that's great 10 years ago. That's great 15 years ago. But what about today? I have a friend and his wife, they just bought one of these exact same units. They bought it for market value, didn't mess around, got it locked in, got it under contract. It was in kind of rough shape, so it's going to need a little bit of money. But I would say their monthly payment is going to be, let's say $1,000 a month. So they bought a property. It's going to be $1,000 a month for the mortgage. Probably put 25% down because it's an investment. It's an investor purchase. And they bought it for $185, let's say. That's not the exact number, but it's really close. So they bought it for $185. They put 25% down. They're going to put a little money into it to freshen it up and make it nice. They're going to put it on the market. That property, I own the one next door. That property is going to rent for $1,500 a month. So they have $500 a month in cash flow that they can save because, of course, there's going to be repairs that come up and are needed. There's going to be things that happen from the tenants, and they're going to have to put money into it over the years. But I would assume over the years, the rent's going to go up, because when I first bought one of these 13 years ago, they rented for $1,000 a month. And now they rent for $1,500 a month. So rent's gone up $500 a month in the last 13 years. So it's going to continue to go up. But here's the big deal. They've made the down payment. They're cash flowing, so they can set that money aside for repairs. But say the payment is $1,000 a month and they are renting it for $1,500 a month. That means that somebody is basically contributing $1,000 a month for you that you're not contributing. I think about that. I own a couple of those properties. I think of all the properties I own, and I probably have, man, I can't even do the math, but say I have between $6,000 and $10,000 in payments a month on all of my investment properties. I don't have $6,000 to $10,000 in disposable income a month that I could put into my retirement account. But every month I have a renter that pays their rent, that pays my mortgage balance down. Now that doesn't all go towards principal. Of course, they're paying my interest, and then some of that goes towards reducing the principal. But even if a rental came out even, where, and I'm not saying to do this because then you don't have money for when things come up, but even if your rental came out even and you just came out flush, but in 20 years it was paid off and you had only put in that original 20 to 25% down. Or if you lived in it first, you owner occupied it, you didn't have to put that much down, then you moved out and bought your next home and kept that first home as a rental property. Somebody paid that property off. So every month, that's like a contribution to your retirement that you're not making. And so that's really how I look at it, is if I have properties with mortgages on average that are $1,000 a month, and say I have 5 of them, that's $5,000 a month going towards my retirement effectively, because again, they're paying my principal and interest, my principal is deducting my balance, and my interest I can deduct on my income taxes. And so sometimes I think we got to go big and you have to have a lot of properties. But if you just today, say you had bought one of these 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you would have a paid off property that was cash flowing $1,500 a month. And that's a lot of money to do something with if you don't have it. And say you bought 2, that's $3,000 extra a month. So sometimes we got to think about, I don't have to be able to buy 20 units. I don't have to be able to buy 100 units. I don't have to be able to buy that apartment complex like these big guys doing it. I literally could buy a couple properties. Say every couple years you can save up and you don't buy that new truck and you don't buy that side by side and you don't buy that boat and that 4-wheeler and all that stuff for a couple years, and you put a down payment on a property every 3 to 5 years. What could that do for your future? And it's very possible, because the thing I want to tell you is people always say, how do people do this? Where does this money come from? But then you look at all the things you have debt on that are not necessary. You have to have your rent or your mortgage. You have to have somewhere to live. I understand that if you don't live in an area with public transportation, you have to have a car and a way to get to work. But do you have to have that $75,000 fancy truck? Or could you get a used $20,000 car? Or if you need a truck, I bought a used $26,000 truck and I've been driving it for years and it's perfectly fine. Meanwhile, people have very expensive, fancy lifted trucks. I have people apply to rent my rentals, and when we see the applications, the rent will be like $1,200, and they have a $1,200 a month truck payment or car payment on their, on their credit report. And I'm like, man, you could be buying this and you could be paying a mortgage, but they chose to buy a really fancy vehicle or really expensive stuff. So sometimes, almost all the time, it comes down to your choices, and there's a lot possible and available for you if you're willing to make those sacrifices. And I think you really should consider that going into this new year. So think about what 1 or 2 properties could do for you. And even just those small little steps, man, they really can make a difference for you in the long term in your retirement.